Good to be with you. I'm Katie Tur from just absolute and utter destruction here in the Pacific Palisades. At this hour, 5 wildfires are still burning across Los Angeles County. The largest of them is this fire, and it is 0% contained. Same goes for the Eaton fire. At least 5 people have died, all of them at that Eaton fire. That's affecting Pasadena and Altadena, just east of where we are, about an hour east of where we are. We also saw a fire break out in the Hollywood Hills overnight, one that firefighters did seem to be able to get control over. And while the winds right now are dying down, enough to do some aerial firefighting. If you got a good ear, you can hear the sound of large airplanes, super scoopers, and other planes up in the air right now. They are back up and they are able to pour water on the fires again. The wind, though, and the wind is picking up. It is, while it's not picking up right now, it is expected to pick up tomorrow. The wind advisory here has been extended until tomorrow, which means everything that hasn't yet burned is still under threat. This has been a really emotional experience coming back here to the Pacific Palisades, especially walking into a community that I grew up in, born and raised in, and to find that there's nothing left. We're talking a lot about the fires that are still raging. And again, the Palisades fire is still 0% contained. There are still hot spots in this community. There are still fires raging throughout the hillside, fires that firefighters are extraordinarily worried about if the winds do start to pick up again, as they are expected to do. But again, looking around here, even if the fires were able to make it to much of the Palisades, there would be nothing left to burn. A little bit earlier, I was able to do a bit of a walk around with my colleague Jacob Soboroff, who also grew up here, going back to some of the places that we knew well, including my first childhood home. Watch.
Was that your front door?
Yeah, and this was the living room. We put a Christmas tree in this corner right here. And behind that was a bathroom that my dad set up a dark room for me in, because I loved photography, and he loved it, and he wanted to teach me how to take pictures and how to develop them. We used to have barbecues back here. We had a little koi pond weirdly in the backyard. I think they changed a little bit of the structure. When I was a kid, I would get really mad when my parents didn't let me have my way. Shock.
What a surprise.
And at one point I hid, this seems so much smaller. I hid right here. I must have been behind something for hours.
Like there were bushes here or something?
Hours. My parents called the fire department My parents called the fire department looking for me, and I just sat there because I was so mad at them.
Did they come?
Yeah, there was an APB out for
literally
this
the fire station is around the corner.
Yeah, and the cops.
Isn't it weird how it just kind of all comes back, right?
I think it looks like it's the same stove.
That's what I'm saying.
It does all come back, and it's weird to see all of your memories, the structures that scaffold your memories, all of them gone. And you can only imagine what it's like for somebody who still lives here, waking up today and getting in here. And we've seen some scattered people who were able to get past the police lines, going back to their home and finding that there's absolutely nothing left. It's just been devastating. Jacob's with me. Jacob, you grew up here as well. We went by your childhood home.
Yeah.
It's also gone. I think that when we're talking about this, it's hard to put your mind around the destruction. It's hard to put it into words. You hear a lot of people talk about, oh, this is a really fancy, rich neighborhood. They'll be able to rebuild. There are a lot of regular people here, and it's going to cost a lot of money to rebuild. And even if you are rebuilding, you've got to rebuild everything.
Yeah.
You've got to rebuild the schools. We went by Pali High. A lot of it is burned down.
By, yeah.
Pali Elementary is heavily damaged.
The Village School, which is right around the corner over here, is gone. Corpus Christi, the Catholic school, is gone.
We went by there, the church as well.
One of the 2 churches over by El Medio is gone, for the Presbyterian Church, and the Lutheran Church and Presbyterian Church burned down. You know what I keep thinking about is there were 23,000 or so people who lay their heads at night in Pacific Palisades, and you and I, for a time, were 2 of them. But there are probably just as many people who come into this town every day that worked at Cafe Vita, that worked at Cafe Palisades, the Chinese restaurant right there, that worked at the Starbucks on this corner, that worked in the whole retail stretch that was behind us. And those people and their livelihoods are so tied to this community. They're as much a part of this community as you or I ever were. And it makes me feel very sad for them as well, because, I mean, I remember there was a guy I told you, we used to have a deli called Mort's on Swarthmore. So this street here across Sunset Boulevard.
If you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, you would know Mort's because Larry David would always go to Mort's.
He did. And before Mort's closed and they built that development across the street, all the gentlemen and ladies that worked there, we knew. And one of them, for a very long time, was a worker here at Cafe Vita.
Yeah.
I mean, these are people that have worked in this community for decades. I'm thinking tonight about them, about where are they going to go? What are they going to do as well? And, man, just driving around this place, it brings back a lot of memories, doesn't it?
We're looking at some of the other fires that they're burning across the city as well. We were looking at the Eden fire a moment ago. We're also looking at a fire surrounding communications towers in the hills. There's a lot of concern that if they get those communication towers, the city's going to have a hard time talking to each other.
Well, those are repeaters, as you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know this as well as I do.
I mean, we already have terrible cell service.
The communication system, especially for law enforcement as well, works with a series of repeaters up on top of Mount Wilson and on the other highest points in Los Angeles County. A lot of people don't know how vast Los Angeles County is. The city alone is 400-plus square miles, and there's 4 million
I think
people.
it can fit Delaware and Rhode Island into the county of Los Angeles.
And so think about being the emergency services that work in this county that rely on these towers that we're looking at right now. They're critical to law enforcement and first responder responses like the ones we've been seeing. And so, I mean, there is no more critical infrastructure in Los Angeles than what you're looking at on the left-hand side of your screen. As we hear another one of these airdrops
Super Scoopers. Let's bring in Larry Welk, who's also joining us. He's just a little bit off camera. Larry, you know this city by air better than anybody.
It's one of these guys that flies up with those.
You've been in the air now for many decades, starting out with my parents, my mom and my dad. How important is it to get these air tankers, these super scoopers back in the air? And just the good news is we've been seeing them on a loop now consistently for the past hour and a half, 2 hours.
It's critical. It's critical to get the aerial assets. As you know, that these are the super scoopers that are flying over right now, so they're able to just dip right into the Pacific Ocean and make a quick round trip, quicker than any airplane or any helicopter can, and certainly the big tankers that
I don't think a lot of people understand that. So these are planes that are going actually into, like, I think we see images of them going into reservoirs all over Los Angeles in other fires. They're actually going out into the ocean, which is less than a mile or two away.
Yeah, these round trips are taking less than 5 minutes. So that's faster than a helicopter and certainly faster than a tanker that can drop the fire retardant. And so for them to be able to get into the Pacific, over here, and put out hotspots at 3,000 gallons, it's really a blessing. And that combined with the helicopters and the other aircraft that are up there, that's the most effective way. I think the greatest example would be last night in Hollywood Hills. You had the fire that started in Runyon Canyon. It looked like it was just going to blow up, and the wind was still up. And then you saw these helicopters come in, and the fire was out within minutes. So the aerial resources...
It helps you understand that if they were able to operate during the beginnings of the Palisades fire, it might not have gotten as out of control as it did, because they weren't able to operate because the winds were so insane.
The problem that first night and that first day was the wind. There's nothing that can stop it. You can throw 1 million aircraft at it. You can throw 1 million firefighters at it, and Mother Nature just couldn't be stopped.
Can you explain why the wind is such an obstacle? Because I had a lot of friends calling me saying, where are the super scoopers? Where are the helicopters? Why is there nobody in the air? I think they felt like people were dragging their feet, but help us understand why it is so dangerous for them to get in the air.
Well, anybody that's ever been on a commercial aircraft that has felt turbulence and have felt uncomfortable, you can magnify that feeling by about 10 times in any aircraft that's flying in that kind of wind.
And fly safely.
Yeah, and fly safely. You just can't do it.
And accurately.
Yeah, and that's the other good point, is that even if you could get the aircraft there, by the time it leaves the aircraft, the water or the fire retardant, it just simply mists away, and it never hits the ground. So it's not only a dangerous operation in that wind, but it's also not effective.
What would have been the maximum sustained wind speed that those airplanes could have been up in. If the gusts were 50, 60, sometimes 100 miles an hour, what would have been safe?
I think that each aircraft has its own limitation, and the pilots that fly them know what that limitation is. Helicopters can fly in stronger wind than an airplane can. Once you get to about that 40-mile-an-hour range, that's when people start to scratch their heads and say, is this safe? And so obviously the other night when we had 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts, not safe at all.
Talk to us a little bit about, we were showing the repeaters on Mount Wilson a moment ago and the fire threatening those. Give us a little bit more about what that would mean for communications in the city.
Well, it's not only communications with law enforcement, firefighters, but it's also the primary means of broadcast. So anybody that's watching TV.
Over-the-air television.
Over-the-air television with an antenna is getting it. But it's also the communication between cell phones and radio repeaters, like you were saying. And so it's a critical part of the infrastructure of Los Angeles. And it's so widespread. And it's, by the way, been through several fires. This is not the first time that the fires have burned up to those towers. There's an observation post up there. There's an observatory up there. So there's a lot of activity, and it sits above 5,000 feet at the top of the mountain there. But they will most likely not lose any of the equipment they have in the past. They've got very good brush clearance up there. And the winds, as Katie, as you pointed out, are cooperating today. So they're going to be in good shape up there. The problem is that they've got so much in the way of topography and geography.